What is it?
Well, it's called Randomiser, and it's fitted to the guidance systems and operates under a very complex scientific principle called potluck. Now, no one knows where we're going. Not even the Black Guardian.
Not even us.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Randomiser Podcast. I am Tim.
I'm Chaz.
And I'm John.
Welcome, John. We are joined by our old buddy John Isles. It's been far too long, my friend, and it's lovely to see you and have you with us here. So, a quick word about how we know each other. John, how did we meet? Tell the story.
Well, I'll leave the money out of this.
That's probably best.
The short version is when chat rooms used to exist on Yahoo.
We are that old.
I think I got an email saying they're shutting them down soon. And I can't believe they're still there. Because that was like 1995 or 96. And so anyway, there was a sci-fi one and a Doctor Who one. And my friends Kevin Hiley and Carl Bowler and me and Andrew Crines were all in there. And we met Tim, or we met Kenny first.
They were both dancing for money, weren't they?
Possibly. So I think Kevin befriended Tim, and then we ended up messaging, emailing, whatever, and that snowballed into us having our own forum. And then with Tim, we made a Cyberman video together. And then with Chaz, I met Chaz in Dublin Airport along with Ali Mills for Tim's Stag Weekend.
That's true.
Because I didn't know, I only knew Tim and Kenny. I didn't know anybody else that was in the party that weekend.
Yeah.
So I was hanging around the lounge or whatever it's called, waiting for Ali and Chaz to find me. And then we just hit it off that weekend. I think I shared a room with you and Ali.
You did, yeah. I mean, that's quite sort of, forward on a first date.
That is quite a bonding experience.
Absolutely.
A weekend never to forget.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was a hell of a weekend.
When was that? About 2002, 3?
I'd actually just got divorced about 3 weeks before, so I was sort of celebrating.
Was it that close? I didn't realise.
Yeah. So, and Doctor Who had only just been announced.
You mentioned in a previous podcast,
yeah.
When they announced the show was coming back, and when they announced Eccleston's casting, we spent a lot of time on the phone. I had a bit of quiet time at work, so I spent all that day of the announcement on Gallifrey Base. In fact, I think you might have even sent me the text saying they've announced the show's coming back.
I did, yeah. I believe I did. That. Yeah. And you phoned me around about 10 o'clock at night or whenever it was to say about Eccleston being cast, and I was actually on a night shift that night, so I was like firing the computer up.
I think it's a source of genuine pleasure in my life that I've occasionally had occasions, that's a really bad sentence, I've occasionally had the kind of opportunity to bring together people from different realms of my life. And like my wedding and my stag night before it were kind of really satisfying in the sense that I had people who I knew through the internet and Doctor Who fandom sat next to tables with people who I'd worked with or people who I'd like known from school and so on, and just that sort of different groupings of people. It's always really enjoyable when the sort of the different areas meet and kind of just like put those together. That's amazing.
Speaking of weddings, that reminds me, Tim came to my wedding.
I did.
In 2006, Amy and I, and thank you for being there in a kilt, because it's not a wedding without a man with a kilt, is it?
Yeah.
Like Alice, for example. Do you remember all our tables? We named them after butterflies because that was our theme for the wedding, and we had like Purple Emperor and all that lot. And one of them was called a Menoptera table.
I think I see where we're going here.
Yeah.
Because a friend of my wife's from church, he's a bit of a butterfly guy, and he went round beforehand and looked at them all. And it was bugging him where he didn't recognise this one.
Oh, it's glorious.
But I made sure my Doctor Who friends and close friends were on the Menoptera table.
Sweet.
So I'm not sure if you were on that one. You should have been.
I think I was on the Zarbi table in the back.
What are the ones underground called?
Optra,
yeah. You're on the Optra table.
It's a bit like my wedding. The only people that actually got the joke of my father-in-law sort of doing the speech was the Doctor Who table.
I thought that was fantastic.
It was basically just a little Easter egg for them.
So we've all of us got children, and we've all of us watched Doctor Who with them at some time or other. And I just wanted to throw that open as a topic for discussion to get us going this episode. And I know, John, you've been tweeting some screen grabs of episodes you've been watching with your family. And which ones have you been seeing?
My daughter Amber is 10. My son Malcolm is 12. Malcolm has a diagnosis of autism. He's quite sensitive about things that can be scary or loud or whatever. When we were watching the revived Doctor Who, Malcolm was born in 2008, so we couldn't watch it when he was a bit of a toddler because he'd be too noisy, disruptive. And so I just used to watch it when they went to bed. Amber took an interest in what I was doing. The children kind of became fans by osmosis, really. You know, seeing toy Daleks around the house or TARDISes, and even we'd have like a family outing to a Comic Con, for example.
Nice.
You know, when they were about 7 or 8, that kind of age. So Amber would she ended up watching the Avengers with me, you know, the original, you know, Steed and Emma Peel. And that's because I'd be watching it after she'd gone to bed, and she'd come down and said, "Oh, what's this? Like, can I watch it?" And said, "All right, okay." So I said, "Should we start with colour?" She said, "No, black and white's fine." You know, so she has taste.
There's a proud parent moment right there.
Oh yeah.
So we started with Town of No Return, and we're just randomly watching them now. So with Doctor Who, when it came to Jodie Whittaker, I thought, okay, slightly feminist hat on here. It might be good for her to see the Doctor as a woman now.
Yeah.
And also she was 8 or 9, so I thought she can handle it. Malcolm, not so much. He could leave the room or whatever, you know. So we've watched series 11, we've watched series 12, and we've got the Doctor Who Mr. Men books. A friend bought us the whole set, so she's read all the Doctors, and she was a bit curious. One day she just said, I don't really know much about the other Doctors, and because we've moved house recently, all my Who DVDs are in storage, but on iPlayer there's everything from Rose up to the present. So I thought, right, okay, we'll start with that, because she's not going to be snobbish about old TV anyway. So we'll start with Rose, and she's liked them all. We've watched on average 2 or 3 episodes a night.
Wow.
I don't want to force them into it. That's why we've kind of waited this long.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember you saying, Charles, with Connor, because I met Connor when he was 8 when we went to yours to watch Rose.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's like, I just remember you telling me, I just let him kind of show an interest himself rather than sitting down to it.
Yeah,
and obviously that worked.
Yeah, I never wanted to force it on him, but I mean, before the show came back, you know, he had obviously videos, DVDs, and he really sort of latched on to K9. I mean, there was a day when we watched K9 and Company 6 times. And I'm still in therapy to try and get over that. But he basically, you know, if I was watching similar to what you say, you know, he would come up and ask, and yeah, if you want. But you know, I really didn't want to, you know, make him into a fan or whatever. But he latched on at the time to Pyramid of Mars. And I remember one of my proudest moments was I had arranged a birthday party for him in the cinema, so he had all his friends there and they were about to watch a film, and I heard him, I was about 4 rows back, and I heard him telling his friend about this one with Sutek, and he was explaining the whole plot, and you know, I was like, oh, you know, it was wonderful. And as I say, by the time the show came back, he was eager, you know, really eager. And my greatest memory, we watched the first Eccleston series, but my greatest memory was that last week where they had every day they had a trailer, and we were sort of like they showed the cobbled together trailer, you know, 10, 9, 8, that sort of thing, and Connor and I, both of us jumping on the sofa with excitement for it, you know, and it's like absolute pure joy. And at just that moment I felt like I was 7 years old again, you know, watching it, because it was so exciting to see how excited he was. I'll never forget that joy. It's absolute joy.
There's something beautiful about sharing that and watching their little faces light up when they see something for the first time that you've known and loved for years. It's much the same way as when you make me watch the Tomorrow People, Chess.
Absolutely. I mean, I can see the joy on your face, you know.
That's terror, but never mind.
Oh, right. Okay, well, the terror on your face is a joy to me.
That's fair enough.
I've enjoyed some mediocre episodes more because I've been watching them with Amber.
Yeah.
And she's got into it. In fact, I took notes. I got her to comment on what she thinks of each of the Doctors. So the Ninth Doctor, he was quite funny, and she really liked when he said, "Rose, run for your life." She said he was fantastic and a good Doctor. She enjoyed the Slovene episodes. Malcolm watched those ones with us. Even like the burping wheelie bin in Rose.
Yeah.
The big divisive moment, the burping wheelie bin.
Connor loved that, and Connor actually, we were walking past the wheelie bin on the Monday, and he was a little bit. So, yeah.
Was that Monday when he was a child, or Monday?
Just Monday, just gone.
That's a good reason not to enter the bins.
Yeah, it is.
10th Doctor. She says he's her favourite so far. She thinks he says funny things. That's one reason she likes him. Her favourite episodes from him are Unicorn and the Wasp.
That's a funny one, that one.
Stolen Earth and Journey's End, which when we were watching them from series 3, 4 onwards, about Donna and Martha, coming back, and she said, is there ever an episode where Rose and Martha are together? It's like, maybe. I don't want to give it away. But basically, all of his companions are together in those 2 episodes. And I think RTD said this himself. This is their version of the Avengers, isn't it?
It really
where
is.
They get all the companions together. And her excitement was my level of excitement when I knew, obviously, all the Avengers were going to be together in one film. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
She knew who Jack was a bit because of, obviously, he was in 2 Joe DeVisca stories. But no, she really liked that. Oh, she really liked the Doctor's daughter as well. And she asked if Jenny was going to come back. I said, unfortunately not. So maybe when Amber's ready for radio drama, we'll get the Big Finish. We'll get the Big Finish box set.
Have you informed her that Jenny is now married to David Tennant?
I did. I tried to explain that to her, and how David Tennant is also the son-in-law of a Doctor as well. I think it was too much for her to quite grasp.
I think there's some sort of Blinovich limitation effect going on there. I'm surprised the universe hasn't imploded.
I think there is. She also liked that Wilf featured quite a lot in The End of Time. I did see her wipe away a tear when the overwrought farewell tour of the 10th Doctor is going on.
Yeah.
I like it.
I hated it a bit less this time.
Yes, that was exactly my experience.
It was 5 minutes shorter than I remembered.
Yes. I think they're emotional minutes.
Yeah, I understand it. Obviously, it's a bit sort of, drags on a bit, but I just really liked it. I actually genuinely blubbed for a good 5-10 minutes at the end of time. I was howling with tears at that, but that's just me.
I always cry when Wilf gives the Doctor a salute, and I did this time as well.
I know. Breaks my... I mean, always. I have stated previously that I want Matt Smith to be my granddad, but, I want Wilf to be my great-granddad.
Yeah, Bernard Cribbins is definitely next in line, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, 11th Doctor, she said he's funny, not serious, although sometimes he is, but not a lot. The favourite episodes she told me were The Girl Who Waited, because she liked the older Amy. She wasn't entirely sure if it was a different actress or not, which just shows how good Karen Gillan was. Because I don't know about you, but when we introduced Amy, I didn't like her. I didn't get on with her. I didn't like the way she was two-timing Rory, so to speak. And not telling the Doctor, by the way, I'm getting married tomorrow. I didn't like selfish Amy, putting Rory down and stuff like that. So I didn't like her at the beginning. What else did she like? Oh, she really liked the Lodger in Closing Time, so she was really pleased to see James Corden, Craig. She really liked seeing Craig back in Closing Time, even though I can only stand James Corden in that and the History Boys. I've never watched what's that show of his called?
Gavin and Stacey.
That's the one.
Yeah, I can understand that. He's a bit Marmite. I mean, I kind of like Gavin and Stacey and History Boys and stuff, but James Corden as a person is very annoying.
Yeah. Blink. she found that kind of boring because the Doctor was hardly in it.
Wow. Take that, Moffat.
I can hear fandom sort of, rising up, and their hackles are rising.
She enjoyed it, but yeah. And she said she wasn't that scared by the Weeping Angels.
Wow. You breed him tough down there, John.
Clearly. I mean, Malcolm doesn't like them, and he left the room partway through the episode. In fact, just on Lego Dimensions game, there's a Weeping Angels level.
Oh, yeah.
And that scared him when we played that a few years ago.
Wow.
It scared me.
That's a good game.
So, in fact, I've just downloaded the new one, The Lonely Assassins, to my phone. It's a sequel to Blink with Osgood and Larry Nightingale from the episode Blink as well.
I've got it. I just haven't bothered playing it yet.
No.
But I'm very lazy with games.
I'm too scared. I'm not much of a gamer.
I couldn't play the game based on Alien Isolation. I couldn't play that alone. It was so good. But
that is a great game.
Yeah.
That really is.
But literally, there had to be somebody else in the house, or I couldn't play it.
I might have to do that with this Blink sequel.
I had Alien Isolation. I also had the Xbox camera, and whenever you were hiding in a locker, it tracked your head movements so you could, and also your breathing. So if you breathe too hard, the alien would come and get it. It was so. I mean, my heart was literally pounding.
That's really cool. I think I never was quite convinced by the kind of sharp-teethed claws Weeping Angel moments, because the terror for them is always in the moments before and the suddenness of the change.
Yeah,
you turn around and a hand sticking out at you.
Yeah, they don't need to try any harder than that.
The Fang version does not look as effective. You're right.
Yeah.
In fact, my wife, Amy, who isn't a fan, but she appreciates fantasy and science fiction. She's more into the Harry Potter and Labyrinth and things like that. And she'll watch Doctor Who, but she wouldn't call herself a fan. She still thinks that Blink is the best episode in the revived series.
I think it is a good one for new fans, or at least new people.
It's a great introductory episode.
Although to get them into the series as a whole, it sort of slightly sells them a dummy in terms of how peripheral the Doctor and Martha are in it.
Exactly. I just said that was David Tennant and Freeman Adjuvan's week off.
It was basically because it was such a grueling schedule.
Exactly.
And I thought it was a great idea, It was, because I like both. I like Love and Monsters. I think it's a brilliant episode and a fantastic, commentary on fandom.
I got more fandom references on this rewatch of Love and Monsters than I did before. I've just got some notes from her on the 13th Doctor. She's the first girl. She does funny things. I've got one to add. She's from my hometown, Huddersfield. There was something I was going to mention about Rosa. When we watched Rosa, we had to explain what racism was to Amber.
Yeah, wow.
I saw similar comments on Twitter the night it went out as well. Similar things of parents having to explain racism to their children, or at least, talk about it, because their kids hadn't been exposed to those kind of views.
Well, hopefully before too long we'll be explaining it the same way we would have had to have explained what witch burning was,
Well, you never know.
Hopefully.
My kids kind of came and went with Doctor Who a little bit, so I have disowned them, of course. But the Max still kind of casually into it, I think, and has a lot of knowledge from when basically he had all my DVDs of the Doctor Who releases and watched them. And but I think neither of them have watched the 13th Doctor. I think they sort of drifted off somewhere in the Capaldi era.
Right.
Not necessarily the programme so much as I think what's going on with them and so on in their lives. But we bumped into Peter Capaldi on a train, and I remember they must have still been into it then, because both of them were really starstruck. I say both of them, I mean me too. But now there'd been some sort of disruption to the train, so everybody was bundled into unreserved seats, and there he was a few rows back. And Max was literally reading a Doctor Who magazine at the time, so kind of ushered him forward, and Peter Capaldi very, very kindly signed that for him, and chatted for a minute or two, and it was a lovely moment. He was very generous. I think he was early in the role. So it was during his first season, but at some point after that, I think the kids kind of lost a great interest in it. But with my youngest, I've been rewatching Buffy, which has been great fun. And like you say, it's it jumps off into a lot of talking points about stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of cultural criticism baked into Buffy and so on.
I kind of love it when your kids discover something that you love, or you used to watch and stuff. I mean, Connor, it's more so comedy with Connor and I, fantasy and sci-fi, like things like Sapphire and Steel, Blake 7 don't really, interest them that much, but it's some old comedies or dramas that you like. It's a really nice way to sort of, bond as well, over these things and rediscover them as well.
I think I've said before about how I used to regularly just say too slow chicken Moringo was a thing when something was too slow, and had to take Lyra and show that episode of Red Dwarf with that moment.
I was going to say, my mum introduced me to The Avengers and The Prisoner in their mid-80s repeats on Channel 4, because she'd enjoyed them when she was a youth or in her 20s, and said, watch this, you'll like it. And in a similar vein, she brought to my attention, there's this new thing called The X-Files that had just started. And I'd missed the pilot it was on Sky One. So the second episode was my first episode of X-Files, but she said, you'll like this, it's your kind of thing. So my mum, not necessarily what we call a fan, she had appreciation for that kind of cult stuff. Yeah. And I mean, she probably started me watching Doctor Who when I was little anyway. So my first memory is Destiny with Daleks when I was 4.
That's one of my earliest ones, actually.
Yeah, mine is Sea Devils coming out. I always remember that.
But on the repeat, of course.
But it must have been a repeat because, it's slightly too early. But that and the big memories is, of course, Bank Holidays and Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 and things like that. I love it.
I think that's where I'd seen it, because you mentioned this in a previous podcast. In fact, this is a funny one. I started thinking of myself as a fan during season 24. And we can get onto this a bit, but I disliked Colin Baker, so I was glad he'd gone. As I was excited about a new Doctor. I was 13, 12, 13, and I started borrowing the Target novelizations from the library.
Yes. And
one I got was Dalek Invasion of Earth, which has film cover art on it. So I borrowed that, and I think Mordrin Undead, and I can't remember what else, but they're the two that I remember. Dark Invasion of Earth, I loved it, and because I'd only ever seen the film, had no knowledge of Doctor Who's past, I pictured it as Peter Cushing in that novel.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
And obviously when I got into fandom, when I was in my late teens, I obviously realised that, it was a different continuity, it was based on a TV story, but, I still love that novelisation.
But who's this old bloke playing Cushing?
And the film is better than the TV version.
Yeah, it's more compact. And
definitely.
The first Target novel I ever got was Abominable Snowman. I got it at a jumbo sale when I was about 7 or 8, and then I sort of started collecting.
No, good stuff. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, John. That's really good stuff.
I hope I wasn't rambling too much.
Not at all.
God, no. Have you heard us?
A man is the sum of his memories, a Time Lord even more so.
This is the part of the show called Your Cheatin Memory, and in this one we have randomly selected a story from the whole of Doctor Who using the wonderful Randomiser.net website. And to our delight, joy and excitement last time, we were given the story Vengeance on Varos. Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant as Perry, and I think fair to say one of the strongest of Colin Baker's era. So John, duly briefed, has watched it, and Chaz and I have literally just finished watching it.
Yeah, about, 25 minutes ago.
So it's very fresh in our minds. John, as our guest, why don't you kick us off on Vengeance on Varos?
Okay, I've made notes.
Good. Fire away.
You're more prepared than us.
Okay, they're in no particular order, but I kind of started in story order. Now, this is a story I have watched a lot, and I think, like Tim, I think you said in the last podcast, it's the best Colin Baker story, because even though all that season's pretty consistent, there's always one weak point, a bad performance or a bad logic point or whatever. Even Revelation, which is the second best one, or even Two Doctors with the novelty of Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines, it's still weak and it's got its problems. So when I've introduced people in the past to Colin Baker, I've chosen Vengeance on Varos just because it's consistent, it's got a good villain, it's got a good story, it's got good acting. But then that brings me to my first bullet point. Jason Connery.
What a letdown.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
He's awful, isn't he? I was actually about to say, well, I agree with you, but Jason Connery is a pile of shit.
J&T cast him for 2 reasons. One, he was a Connery.
One is left nipple and one is right.
And that topless scene. Is it even in the Life and Scandalous Times? It says that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I will go on to my my second nipple tangent.
We are not doing another episode title about nipples.
Come on! This is not fair, you know. I mean, I'm being discriminated
If nobody
against.
else says anything funny, that might have to be the episode title.
to give Jason Connery his due, though, he was really good in Robin and Sherwood.
I mean, he did Doctor Who
Yeah, it
before.
was before it, yeah. It may well have actually been his first acting gig, I don't know, was it?
I'm not sure. I
know
he
it
probably
was Owen Teague's first acting gig, who played the guard, you know, but
Maldak.
he's... Yeah, Maldak. But he's obviously quite a well-known actor now. But, I mean, the cast is great. I mean, Martin Sheen is... always... I done it again!
And drink.
No! Oh, I'm always getting these
Martin
fucking
Jarvis.
names wrong. Martin Jarvis, or Michael Sheen, whatever. Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic, but he's always good value, you know, whenever you see him. Nabil Shaban
Steals the show.
as Sil just steals it. He's wonderful. And getting on to nipples again, you know, we've got his two sort of sadomasochistic guards who I definitely think JNT had a sort of role in the costume and casting there.
What else is in your notes, John, hastily?
Okay, moving swiftly on. Arak and Etta, the so-called, I suppose, Greek chorus, or whatever you want to call them, watching the entire story, never interacting. Now, until this rewatch, I didn't know who Stephen Yardley was. I remembered him, the guy from Howard's Way, but I never watched that. But I've recently watched Secret Army for the first time, and he's in the second series of that, and he's very watchable, very likeable.
Yeah.
In fact, I've just started watching another of his series, the XYY Man, and he's also very good in that.
I believe he was also in Day of the Triffids. He's one of the first people that Bill encounters. His daughter can see, but him and his wife are blind.
Oh, I remember that couple.
Scene.
I remember that. Yeah, I got that traumatised me as a child. That's something else my mum made me watch.
Wonderful production.
Oh, and I also forget, he's that Muto that befriends Sarah in Genesis
So he
and
is.
Daleks.
That's right, he is. He's Severin.
He doesn't do much though, does he?
Because I always remember that, because I've got the album of Genesis. She's a gnome. Oh, gnomes are all enemies. Kill her now.
Why must we destroy beauty?
Yeah. It's a bit like Cruise of the Gods, you know, Children of Castor.
I think he does mostly play villains, and he's actually quite heroic in Genesis, isn't he? So.
Yeah.
So I think he was quite an antagonist in Howard's Way. I watched it a bit, but not for years.
Yeah.
But
Wasn't he a JR type in Howard's Way?
So
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
kind of like sleazy businessman sort of thing.
Howard's Way was alright, but Triangle was the true class.
Are you thinking of Kate O'Mara now? Somebody?
Oh God, what an awful show.
At the risk of deja vu, back to your notes, John, swiftly.
Sorry. So the thing with Arak and Etta, it's really good world building because they talk about the mining, they talk about voting, they talk about watching the torture videos and all that kind of stuff. The whole idea was Philip Martin had watched Doctor Who with his daughter because he hadn't watched it for ages, and he just had this idea of, I wonder what television would be like in the future. He thought the only way to write this is to do it to Doctor Who, so he pitched it. J&T was sceptical that somebody with his writing pedigree would want to come down to Doctor Who's level, so he had to fight to prove to J&T that he meant it.
Yeah.
But which is a good thing for us, because he gave us Sil. As you said, Neville Showbound and Sil, probably the most memorable or well-realised 80s villains from Doctor Who.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the fact
Very
that
much.
he was in, Mission to Magnus, which was scrapped for season 23. He was in Mind Warp, or whatever you want to call it, in the trial. And then they did that straight to DVD from Real Time Pictures, Sil and the Devil Seeds of Ardor, I think it is. In fact, did you notice Neville Shaban gave a copy of it to his friend Jeremy Corbyn. There's a picture of Jeremy Corbyn giving a talk, holding a Blu-ray in his hand, talking about capitalism and exploiting people as an example of how drama is relevant.
How brilliant. Has he done any Big Finish? I'm sure he must have.
I think I looked it up. They've done, I think it might be an 8th Doctor story with Syl and Charlie. I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up. So also amongst the cast, Forbes Collins, the chief guard.
The bald henchman.
Yes, he was King John in Maid Marian and His Merry Men.
Oh yeah.
He was very over the top. But again, he was serious.
He had a good sort of line of not too kind of over the top nasty in Pharos, I thought.
Exactly. In fact, this is further on in my notes, but I'll bring it up now. So it's talking about the chief guard. So the guards live in luxury, so to speak. One guard voted to be made governor against his will, but the guard elite, the ones that are permanently guards, who are descended from the guards rather than the prisoners, they have this kind of, they're not suffering food shortages or whatever. But that reminded me, and was this a deliberate thing in the writing, of when Martin Luther discovered in Rome, when he visited, that the Pope and the priests and the bishops and whatever had secret families and relationships. What do you think? Am I reading too much into it?
I doubt it. It's pretty rich in its heritage. I mean, it's obvious shades of 1984.
I mean, Philip Martin's, like a very, very good writer, and I'm sure he knows his history quite well. So, you borrow from anything and everything, and I wouldn't be surprised. It's like we were discussing when we were watching it, that the V symbol everywhere, but it's obviously very similar to the symbol in 1984 movie, which obviously this is a very similar idea to 1984 as well.
In 1984, the inner party had privileges and luxuries that the outer party didn't have at all. Winston's shocked when he visits O'Brien that he can turn off the V screen and things like that. But the also, I think, sadly, you don't have to look far in history for examples of the ruling elite living it up when the oppressed masses aren't.
No, you're
you can
right.
just look at Russia, basically, during Stalin's reign.
It would be like to live in a society where one of your leaders could have a secret mistress and use public funds to pay money to her business, say. And
I mean, I can't imagine when that sort of thing would happen.
No, we've long passed those times now, thankfully.
Definitely past those times.
Two things about plodding, actually. That go-kart.
Oh God!
the low-speed go-kart. Which do you think is the worst? That one or the one from the Happiness Patrol?
Oh, I think by Happiness Patrol they'd mastered the technology.
Yeah, we were sort of discussing that because they'd used that there, they'd used it in Happiness, but there was another one. What one was it we were talking about?
I don't remember. They do love a kind of in-studio go-kart though, don't they? It's a bit like the cleaners in Paradise Tower. No, both times it broke down. Did it break down twice? I was sort of like, oh no, they've been increased to walking speed.
Well, exactly. It's like you can't drive it any faster because either the set or you're in the studio.
Yeah.
It's like a low-speed chase, like in Austin Powers with the steamroller or the ice thing. I can't remember which it is.
The only reason they weren't overtaken was because it filled the whole corridor.
Did you notice that it got made into a meme about the Evergreen? The tanker that was stuck in the sewers. They'd actually somebody had dressed the car up as the Evergreen. I mean, you look at Vengeance, if you sort of nitpick it, there are some really weird bits because we were sort of discussing why they wouldn't believe that Perry and the Doctor were time travellers when they'd already mentioned earlier in the script that Zyton was used for space and time vessels.
Oh, that's true, but aren't the only people with them really Time Lords? But then does that mean the Time Lords went back in time to get Zyton 7?
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Or they bought them from them in the future. Great cliffhanger, the cut it now bit.
Yeah, love
glorious. As an editor, I love that one.
Although some people argued it shouldn't cut to the shot of Syl laughing, it should have just crashed into the credits.
I still like it because I love Syl's laugh. It is the filthiest thing I've ever heard in Doctor Who.
Weirdly and slightly disturbingly, it always reminds me of an old flatmate of mine because she had that same laugh. It
just reminds me of those stranger danger type videos where you get somebody, you know.
I know it's always controversial, but is there anything else we could say about the acid bath scene? Because people always bring it up as an argument against the programme.
I found it less brutal than later on when he deliberately rigs up the death trap with the poisonous vines. He doesn't, the first guard's a complete accident, bumped in by his colleague. Yeah. The second one is pulled in by the first colleague. The only thing that's distasteful about it is the fairly dull quip about, forgive me if I don't join you.
I mean, I can see, yes, obviously it's in, I suppose, poor taste, whatever, but it genuinely doesn't bother me. I found it entertaining at the time. I didn't really think much about it. When I got older, obviously, I sort of thought about it, but I've seen so much worse. I know Doctor Who's a family programme, but I think it's a minor quibble.
I think a lot of the criticism is actually because it cuts quite close to the bone of where television was going. And you look at the rise since of reality TV and the kind of, obviously not yet at the depths of watching people being tortured or executed, although I've seen some episodes of Judge Judy that come close. It's more like there's a distinct kind of ethical grey area that we crept over with Big Brother and onwards in terms of, the way that people are manipulated for the joy of the cameras.
Yeah, you only need to look at, it's obviously commenting and it's predicting. It's like I said last time about Nigel Neal when he wrote Year of the Sex Olympics about the birth and the idea of reality TV and taken to its extremes, and that again is reality TV taken to extremes. And we've had people die over reality TV. People have killed themselves. The Jeremy Kyle show got pulled last year or something because one of the, I'd say, contestants more than guests killed themselves over certain comments or whatever. And the way they manipulate, they drain the colour. When they want somebody to be the villain, they harsh up the contrast, drain the colour, make them look awful, and then they do the Star Trek trick with the one that's the hero, sort of beautifying the lens and things. It's all manipulative and it's all disgusting, and that's where we were coming. But in Vengeance, that's what they were trying to get across. But maybe at that point, TV critics and moral outragers weren't necessarily as clued up on subtlety.
But it betrays the motivation behind the criticism is always about the depiction rather than the underlying message, And
of course,
if there was a shred of kind of integrity, it would be lauded as a kind of maybe a slightly low budget and tangential, but nonetheless, it's a satire on the excesses of television, and brave and powerful for that.
Very.
It's just an irony, isn't it? But it's accused of the very thing that it's commenting on.
So often the case, though. It's an easy target. TV, video games, these sort of things, they're easy targets, and a lot of the time they are actually satiring what they're supposedly being held up as, being awful for.
I was going to say, when the Doctor and Perry are reunited after that poison vine scene, they hug, and it seems to be a genuine sense of emotion and friendship between the two. Compare that with their bickering and the TARDIS at the beginning, and in every other story of that season.
Yeah,
it's good that they can show they are actually friends.
When we talked about Colin's era, I was sort of saying that those bickering scenes were absolutely the worst for me. And actually, the TARDIS scenes, although again they kind of just pull the energy of the episode down completely in setting up the crisis that drives them to Varos. But at least they're kind of not bickering, and actually Perry does push the Doctor reluctantly and gradually into trying to find a solution. So, yay.
Yeah, I mean, the character was abysmally treated, really. She was obviously sexualised, terrible outfits all the time, and it seemed like nearly every second story had some pervert leering over her.
That's one of the few there isn't really, I think.
Still says she's ugly, doesn't he?
Yeah, she's constantly anxious. Her entire sort of character is just, scared, anxious. She never comes across as other than two-dimensional, you know. And it is a damn shame, although they did improve her slightly once they got to trial. You know, you could see the two of them were friends. This was the idea, but it just never got executed properly. But it's like I said, where they did it with Capaldi and Clara. They were doing what was initially supposed to be Colin Baker's arc of prickly to avuncular, but they done it better within his era.
Instead of prickly to avuncular with Colin Baker, it was so broken up we just got prick to uncle.
Yeah.
Colin Baker is kind of tied with William Hartnell as my favourite Doctor, because obviously now as an adult fan, I appreciate what he's doing with the character, and I knew what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But and I know he deliberately did play it a little bit like Hartnell as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's a shame that most of his stories were flawed or rubbish in some cases.
Very much.
But again, Big Finish, we said many times, have given him, the lease of life his character deserved.
They've been the making of Colin Baker's character, and it's great, really, that, as I say, he's had that opportunity.
Something on Perry that just struck me, as you were talking there, was actually a lot of the time, especially in New Who, there's this sense of great fun, and being with the Doctor is great fun, and of course it explores that, and there's fear and danger and peril, but Perry just never has any fun at all.
No.
It's so heartbreaking. So we have correspondence from Ali, a voice from the past. Oh, hang on, that's a Blake 7 episode. But Ali wrote us his thoughts having gone away and watched Vengeance on Varus. So I'll read those out now and see if there's anything else that we spring off into from that. See if Ali bitterly disagrees with us or if we're broadly of a mind on this one. So here we go. Vengeance on Varus was a dystopian vision of a corrupt and grimly exploitative society. I loved it at the time and remember thinking, this sixth Doctor is very different from his predecessor. I like him. In a strange way, Vengeance has become a sadly accurate prediction of our society's degradation. A society with a corrupt political system, ill-informed people voting in referendums unwilling to listen to reason, as ignorance and propaganda drown out the weakened efforts of those trying to help them. People watching exploitative and trashy TV, while their lives are blighted by poor decisions and dishonest dealings, which leave the workers poor and wicked big business leaders keeping all the wealth, all very familiar. It's this political societal allegory which I find is the strongest aspect of the story, and a lot of it's done very well. It's grim viewing much of the time, hardly a fun family fantasy, but I enjoyed it sufficiently at the time and still do. There are flaws though which I disliked at the time, and still hold it back in my view from being a top standard adventure. My problems with this start with the long drawn-out scenes in the TARDIS where the Doctor wallows in self-pity and gives up easily on any effort to get out of the TARDIS malfunctioning. I strongly dislike the narcissistic characterisation of the Sixth Doctor, where he shows weak and cowardly self-pity, arrogant and obnoxious aggression, and pompous egotism. Another aspect of the Sixth Doctor I dislike is his tendency to violence and morally questionable behaviour. It's totally out of keeping with every other incarnation of the Doctor until a few moments with the 11th and 12th Doctors. In this story, the Doctor fires weapons, leaves a booby trap which kills a guard, and makes a humorous quip after a fracas with two guards leaves them both falling to their deaths into an acid bath. Neither of these events where guards are killed features the Doctor deliberately killing them, otherwise I would judge it a lot more negatively. But this lack of care about deaths caused by his actions is something I don't accept as how the Doctor should act. It does detract a bit from my view of this story, as does his unlikable attitude in the early TARDIS scenes. Perry is her usual annoying, whiny and unconvincingly acted self. There are some scenes that are unimpressive, such as the mental projections of a giant fly in a desert, which I find weak ideas of how to halt the group's escape, the easy resolution to the cell alterations of the two women, and a fake execution. There are other scenes that are much better, with Martin Jarvis as the Governor and Nabil Shaban as Syl particularly bringing great quality. Syl is an excellent villain, as he is a fun and well-designed alien with believable wicked motivations. I also like the debating couple who represent the population of Varos. I feel this was a conscious effort to capture the feel and success of the wonderful caves of Androzani. It's similar in its atmosphere, which is bleak, political shenanigans, mining colony setting, as well as featuring a masked, disfigured villain. That villain in this story is the feeble and unimpressively acted Quillam, who's not worthy in comparison to the fantastic villain from Androzani, but fortunately Syl provides some more satisfactory villainy in the story. With the usual characterisation of the Doctor, and a few better-handled scenes, this could have been a 9 out of 10, but the weaker scenes and the choices in how to portray the behaviour and attitudes of the Sixth Doctor detract a bit from the excellent ideas and strong dramatic scenes. There we go. When will somebody write in that we can disagree with, damn it?
Yeah, I know.
Did he say he didn't like the fake hanging?
Yeah, it's not.
I like that.
Oh, that was fine. Useful plot point.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. There you go. We vehemently
Haha,
disagree.
brilliant. Flame war. I think it was a believable device as well that the governor would fake the execution to get people to talk.
Things like the SAS, sometimes, when they're in situations, they have taken people on a helicopter, bagged the heads, and they're more or less just hovering off the ground, but they're threatening to drop them out. It's a recognised device to get people to talk.
I know some people would like to try that on.
I had a couple of other tiny little notes. I hadn't ever noticed before that the priest in the execution scene is intoning "in the name of the great video," which I thought was kind of fun. Yeah. I was waiting for praise be to Betamax, but it never came.
And there was the bit before when Colin Baker says, "Do you always play the priest?"
Yeah, I mean that's like metas out of the screen, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Some really good, good lines.
I think the only thing they could have added, it might have been too comedy, was like sports commentators on the executions. It's like, and the doctor stepping up to the noose there. I think I'd
do it like they could have done it like Richie Venos. Yes, the doctor is, he's waving a pardon. He's waving the pardon.
I think we haven't had a pardon waving since, was it 37? 38?
Yes.
The other sort of minor complaint I had was watching on BritBox, the subtitles are oddly truncated, the last letters being chopped off, so it was kind of vengeance on Varro for a while. But, weird one.
A bit strange.
Lovely stuff.
Look, when I give the word, press the button. The big one? Yes, maybe it works in conjunction with the others.
We are going to choose a new episode, and John, we would love you to send us in your thoughts, as Ali has done for this one. So we don't know what we're going to get. We're going to
come on, old series.
2 in a row.
Probably.
Come on. What are the chances?
On your
if it's another Matt Smith, I'm fucking through myself out the window.
Haven't we done them all yet? All right. If you hear breaking glass, folks, you'll know.
Yeah, add a breaking glass sound effect.
All right, well, let's try and find out. Now, what could it be?
The invasion of time.
Oh, yes!
But
come on, baby!
But I have literally just watched this as well. I
haven't.
Just been through it in my rewatch of
I love Invasion of Time. I really genuinely love Invasion of Time.
6 parts.
Especially the TARDIS scene set in a leisure centre.
Yeah.
I was going to say they're my least favourite bits.
I love it.
I think it was an old mental hospital. The scenes with Leela and the female Time Lord.
Rodan.
Oh, yeah.
Rodan. And they were good, showing them together. What's his face? The guy that was
Milton Johns.
Milton Johns playing a slimy underhand guy,
so
just like he did in Android Invasion and Enemy of the World.
He's a 70s sort of slime ball, really.
He always play those parts.
Yeah. He's great. He's in a TV show, a kids show called King of the Castle.
Oh, yes, I've seen that.
Do you remember it?
Does he play the dirty rascal?
Amber watched most of that with me as well. We've still got the last episode to go.
Meant to ask, actually, if you've watched Classic Who with Amber at all.
Sort of, again, that not forcing her, but when she learnt about Greek myth at school, I decided to show her Horns of Nymon.
What?
It's a good story despite all its flaws, and I also thought because of the Minus Horn the myth thing, it would help her.
All the stories
I think Chaz has had a heart attack.
I'm coming up to it in my rewatch and sneakily looking forward to it.
Graham Crowden is not only eating the scenery, he's putting salt and vinegar on it. It's just wonderful.
But I was going to say, when we finished this rewatch with Amber, and I've got my DVDs back or whatever, she said she's willing to watch them. It's just having the opportunity.
The interesting thing about Invasion of Time as well is I thought that when we were watching Spyfall, I always get it wrong. When we were watching Spyfall, I thought those shimmery aliens could have been the Vardens.
You're right, they could be.
The first in many monsters that resembled other monsters that season, although probably the most tangentially. We'll go away and watch it, and then you can send us in what you think.
Yeah.
I don't have a sonic screwdriver because I'm not off on a romp. I call it what it is.
A great loss of pomp and circumstance.
While we got the randomizer powered up, we've got to do a little bit of Romp or Pomp, which I think John should enjoy.
I've enjoyed this segment, so...
Yeah. Now you can suffer through it like the rest of us.
Rompy Pompy.
So, for those of you who don't know, Romp or Pomp is where we just use the randomizer, select a random story, and very quickly, hot take, is it a fun-filled knockabout romp or a more serious pomp and circumstances sort of show? So, here we go. Here is the first. The Haunting of Via Diodati.
Oh, definitely Pomp.
Yeah.
Pomp.
It's quite heavy, scary stuff, isn't it? But
It's my favourite Jodie's favourite story of Jodie's era.
the
I
only
see why, it is very good.
twitch on the
brilliant.
rompometer is Graham's toilet search.
I really like that. I mean, that is... I mean, you never see that in telefantasy or anything. Only Babylon 5 has ever done a toilet scene.
I was going to say that, Babylon 5.
I've never watched Babylon 5. I've watched the pilot, actually, in an attempt to, but... Alright, another one.
Again.
Victory of the Daleks. Romp.
Yeah, Romp.
Romp.
Yeah.
Slightly disappointing Romp plus toy advert.
Yes, very much. Shampoo bottle advert.
Yeah, weird. Here's another one. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
It is Romp, but
Yeah.
it's very...
Disturbing, unsettling.
Disturbing, but also deceptive. Very deceptive. Really, really good and very underrated story, I think.
I haven't seen it for years, actually. Eventually I'll get to it again. And maybe on the randomizer first. Okay, here's another. The Time of the Doctor.
Pomp.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about that last week, weren't we? I was, when we were talking about Grower Ashore.
Yeah.
And every single time I watch that, every single time, it just seems to get better. It's got something else. It's such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful exit for Matt Smith.
I mean, it's low on the rompiness, but you do have the nudity.
Yeah. I mean, the start of it's very rompy,
Yeah, I really liked all the stuff with the villagers' children's drawings of the Doctor and him getting old and protecting the village.
Yeah.
But it does feel like that goes on a bit with all the different monsters having a go each. It is very enjoyable. I enjoyed it more when I rewatched it a couple of years ago.
I think you could say it's a slightly better version of David Tennant's exit, his grand tour.
The Doctor stays in one place and they come to him this time.
And of course, we get the cameo of a previous companion as well when he hallucinates Amy, which was a nice surprise.
Beautiful. And he's got that wonderful line about breath on the mirror. It sort of breaks my heart every time I hear that.
It's an angle they've not really done on Regeneration so deeply. There's more to do, maybe more ground to cover in terms of the death of identity.
This is just what I mean about Moffat. He's got such a way with a turn of phrase. The way he sort of builds a character or just a few lines can really make you think.
Alright, one more and we will move on. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. That's trying to be a romp.
This is the next episode I'm going to be watching with Amber.
Right.
It's definitely Romp. Well, it's not a surprise, but it's one of the weak Chindrel episodes. Because I don't understand, why does the Doctor bother assembling a team from throughout time and space? Why does he bother? I don't
Maybe
get
he's
it.
just been to see the Avengers movie. That was Romp or Pomp. Thank you, everybody.
The gift of the TARDIS, the telepathic field, gets inside your brain, translates.
We're going to try a new thing, which I'm going to call Gift of the TARDIS. Now, Chaz had this idea that what if we put the titles of Doctor Who episodes through a few steps of translation and see if we could still recognise what came out. So I believe Chaz has prepared some, which you did with what, voice recognition? Or just a thesaurus?
Yeah, it was a sort of thesaurus.
I've used Google Translate and put Doctor Who titles through a few languages. So John, we're hitting you cold with this. It's going to be a guessing game. But just see if you can identify what we got. So John can have first guess of each other's and then hand it over to the team.
The first one I tried was Vengeance on Virus.
Wasn't that the vaccination
that's
plan?
really hard.
See, I actually use voice input a lot now because my right hand isn't very useful since I had my stroke, so I tend to do a lot of my texts, and Tim will attest to this, that when he gets them, most of the time they're okay, but they can be very, very surreal, you know.
Occasionally filthy. So I'll do my first one. So this has just been in and out of Spanish, and it's an easy one to start with. So which Doctor Who story it came out as Judo Fugitive?
All right.
I'm going to guess Fugitive of Judoon.
Yes, quite right.
You could well be right.
Good.
A bit harder than Chaz's.
Yeah, but you know, absolutely doable. Chaz, do another one.
I can't find them, I'm sorry.
All right, there's a level of preparation we've come to expect.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm really sorry.
Mine get harder and weirder. The next one was passed through Afrikaans, Albanian, Amharic, Arabic, Armenian and Azerbaijani, and came out as The Occupation.
The Invasion?
Yeah,
right,
it's not that hard in the end. This one you're just never going to get. I love this. This has been through Basque, Belarusian, Bengali, Bosnian and Bulgarian.
Jesus.
So bear in mind with the Bulgarian, it's going to be backwards. Not really.
Yeah.
But it came out as, you've got no hope, Philosophy. If either of you get this, I will buy a hat and eat it.
Philosophy.
Philosophy.
Legopolis.
No, but I see where you're coming from. That would have been brilliant. You want to guess,
I have
John?
no idea.
Frontiers?
No, right Doctor though.
Castrovalva?
Oh, Castrovalva.
No. I'd be literally, you'd name every Davison story before you got
We
to
would.
it. It was The Visitation. And I have no idea why. That was like too translated. Okay, this one is gettable but difficult, and also don't go off into a bad place. So this has been through Filipino, Icelandic, Romanian, Esperanto, Pashto, Lao, Azerbaijani, Chinese and Estonian, as I'm sure you'll be able to tell. It came out as This Girl Came.
The girl who waited?
Oh, it's a good guess, not right.
The girl who lived, girl who died, whatever they were called.
Yep. There's a subtopic. How many Doctor Who stories have the girl or something in the title? No, the answer was The Girl in the Fireplace. Weird, huh? I think that might be the first of the girl stories. I've got one more. And this one is gettable and amusing in what it came back with. It's been through Punjabi, Lithuanian, Azerbaijani, Nepali, Estonian and Tajik.
Jesus bloody well.
And it came back as Dead Planet.
The Daleks.
Shrewd but dull.
Planet of the Dead?
Yes, John, that's right. I know, I was quite amused that it came back with Dead Planet, given its place in Doctor Who history as a title.
That was very good. That was a good answer, Chaz.
Yeah.
I try.
You know what that story's also called, don't you, Tim and Chaz? What did the production team call it in 1964?
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean,
it was The Mutants.
That's right.
I anticipate a challenge!
So, I have challenged Chaz to watch The Mutants, which he's never managed to see all of, and mice notwithstanding, I'm really hopeful that we might have actually had a result this time. So, have you seen it, Chaz?
Well, of course I've seen it, Tim. We just watched it.
What do you mean, we?
You were with me. We were watching it over Zoom. We literally, about 45 minutes ago, watched it.
The Mutant?
Yeah, I mean, I was really captivated because I was expecting Joe Grant in it, right? But for some reason it was Perry. Now I never realised this, right? And you know, it was fascinating, especially the bit where she was turning into a bird. I mean, that was actually, it was great effects for the time, and you know, just absolutely captivating.
Chaz.
I mean, you were even commenting on it yourself.
Chaz.
I can't believe you don't remember this.
Maybe a slight difference between a chunk of a particular episode in which there is a mutation and the John Pertwee story, The Mutants.
I don't get it.
Next week?
Yeah.
All these corridors look the same to me.
It's time for Which Corridor's This, which is where we talk about my ongoing rewatch of the whole of Doctor Who from the beginning, inspired by Toby Haydock and Rob Sherman's book Running Through Corridors. So I've reached the Pirate Planet, which is the second of the Key to Time series. So we have the new companion Romana, played by Mary Tam, and written by Douglas Adams, who utterly my favourite author, and I got to say it's always disappointed me, this story, for that reason, I think, because I love Adams's work so much that the fact it's a kind of lumpy and imperfect, I think very early TV script for him,
His first?
Yeah, makes me feel kind of let down. There's still flashes of brilliance in it, and actually I really enjoyed rewatching it this time. And I think one of our ongoing themes, if such a high-weighting thing can be attributed to this podcast, has been the kind of burden of expectation, maybe when you're watching Doctor Who, especially for the first time. But this time, expecting no more than a romp, I would say I got one. What do you guys think about it, John?
Last time I watched it, it was enjoyable. Like you, there are certain aspects that are disappointing, because you kind of think there's that expectation of Douglas Adams and just, the fourth Doctor thing of like, oh, they're all good. But no, even the stuff where, the Doctor distracts the guard with the licorice all sorts, I like. Or even the fact that they're obviously speedboats for those flying cars.
Air cars, yeah.
And like the over-the-top pirate captain, the polyphase Avaton and K9. I like that battle.
Mm-hmm.
The nurse being behind it all, It's all good, but as you said, it's just got that slight weakness that lets it down. I wondered, with it being his first TV script, because I know, didn't the novelisation base it on an earlier draft that was too ambitious for the budget?
I didn't know that.
Right. So, and I also wondered if it suffered because didn't he send the first Hitchhiker's script in to who was the script editor then? It was Tony Reid, I think.
Right.
So he kind of got his Doctor Who commission, and then they commissioned the rest of Hitchhikers at the same time.
It all happened at once.
So I had to work on both.
Yeah.
And so maybe Who suffered because he had to write 5 more scripts for Hitchhikers at the same time.
Yeah. No, I think there was a bunch of wonderful moments, but it's sort of like a little slightly less than some of its parts. Pacing is really bad in it, I think, in terms of you've got the Mentiads kind of casually strolling through the countryside up to to attack the captain's fortress, and any sense of urgency that had been built up in the scenes on the bridge just drains away as they kind of amble onwards.
You're right, they're not much of a menace, are they? They take 2 episodes to knock somebody unconscious.
They think they bored them to sleep. But no, I love it. I remember I was actually felt quite scandalised that he's distracting them with like licorice all sorts and not jelly babies. And then I sort of thought, well, maybe he's just saving the jelly babies to eat.
Exactly, they're the best. So
keep them.
Or at least his best. Doesn't he use dolly mixtures or something like that in Image of a Fendal?
Yeah, I wonder if they just stood out better, or that's what the prop player bought. There's a lot of good stuff in there. The Mentiads, I think, for me, are the kind of weak heart of it, in terms of that it's that kind of that choice of kind of serious and kind of mentally cerebral, and that just drains any kind of pace and wit out of it all, I think, which is a shame. Yeah. But the parrot is fun if. We've got clumsy CSO. I think the idea of materialising around a planet, genius, very clever.
Very clever. I mean, it's very, as you say, very clever and ambitious. I don't have massively great memories of it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I just remember mainly enjoying the captain and Mr. Fibuli. Mr. Fibuli! It's such a fun sort of romp. Tom Baker and the captain are very good together as well. I like the whole Key to Time as a sort of an overall story. I think it's a really neat idea. But yeah, I must admit I don't have massive memories of this, and it's a bit of a shame because I'm actually quite tempted now to just rewatch the whole of the Key to Time series, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea if I actually wanted to contribute to the next one.
I think K9's quite well used, and maybe Tam's really sort of settling in as Romana in a nice way, I think. There's sort of less of the out-and-out kind of rejection and rivalry, and it sort of becomes a more kind of slightly affectionate sparring between the two of them. Although they're not actually on screen together a lot in it.
What is it? Is the next one Androids of Tara or
Stones of Blood? And then Androids of Tara.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, the Taran would-beast. Come on!
I felt sorry for the captain by the end, and that was quite a nice reversal. I didn't find his bluster too off-putting. I think at first you're just like, oh God, give us a little bit of depth. But when there's not quite enough meat on the bones of him as a kind of tortured puppet of Xanxia when that's revealed.
No.
Need a bit more of that. But I liked her. I thought the actor playing Xanxia, the nurse, was very good. You don't really see much of the older one. They're quite cavalier about what is a living being still, in terms of what is that, and turn off the time dams, let it die, and all of that. If you stop and think about it, it's a little bit callous. But I'm sure he's done worse, even pre-acid bath. It's good stuff. I think the Key to Time season's such a clever structure. You don't see the segment. It's all kind of like, we'll just toss it off into the vortex, and we'll go and track it down later, which is kind of cavalier. You could have a whole other in-between stories. Have Big Finish done this?
Probably.
Yeah. I have not. I know they've done a sequel series, sort of.
Yeah, Key to Time.
I think it was Peter Davison's Doctor, but I don't really know if...
I'm pretty sure I've heard them. It didn't really stick in my mind. No, you could fit an entire series worth of... God damn it, where's the second segment gone now?
I think actually Big Finish are getting to the point where they've got scripts and they've recorded an equal amount of Tom Baker stories to his TV run.
Wow.
Because they've been, getting through them they haven't been released, but they've all been recorded. I assume it's mainly because obviously he's getting on a bit,
Morbid,
so,
but
sensible. It's a bit like they do with the DVD commentaries and things. They record these things years in advance sometimes.
It's like their agent phones up and goes, "Before you die, do you think you can fit in another DVD or two?"
Yeah,
but
it's very true.
It's a little bit like we got Anthony Ainley to do the commentary on Keeper of Traken.
Yep.
And then, unfortunately, he died and wasn't able to do anything else for them.
Yeah.
Same with J&T. They thought he'd be around forever.
Yeah.
They got one interview for Resurrection of the Daleks, and unfortunately, he...
That was it, I know.
Yeah.
For all it's morbid, we're glad of it after the fact, aren't we?
Liz Sladen as well,
Yeah.
Although they have Sadie Miller, her daughter, just on the Return of the Cybermen.
Cybermen are returning again?
Apparently so.
I think every Cyberman story after 10th Planet had that title, I'm sure. Because I know the Wheel in Space did.
Yeah.
And I think probably Moonbase did as well.
Well, this is a sort of alternate version of Revenge of the Cybermen. It's got more or less same characters and setting.
Just less camp Cybermen. Oh, speaking of dying... I remember in an earlier podcast, Chaz was mentioning his 60th birthday.
Oh, yes.
And the subject of Myrka came up for some reason.
I think it was meant to be a mishearing of a milker.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And we're just saying how... so I messaged Tim and I said, perhaps we should get a Myrka costume for
you bought me a Merkin? Why the hell would you buy me a Merkin?
Myrka.
We're just guessing.
So for Chaz's 60th birthday party, we could dress up as a Myrka.
Yeah.
As long as you don't turn up in Merkins, I don't care what you dress up as.
Tim and I were trying to decide who was going to be at the front and the back half of the Myrka, didn't we?
It might be the first Myrka with two front halves, I think.
And I said, I've seen the film Top Secret, so I'd like to be at the front.
I actually done a re-edit of that scene in Warriors of the Deep where I had basically put a flashing red light on it and a klaxon going off, and cut out as many scenes of the Myrka as possible, and basically just have it coming through the door and stuff, and it works surprisingly well.
So you're going to have to put this on YouTube if you keep mentioning it.
Yeah,
face the lawyers of the BBC alongside Disney.
Yeah, that story could have been fixed with lighting and some rust marks, and just made the place look like it was run down as hell, and dim lighting, bit of flickering.
Was there a thing that the studio lighting technicians got paranoid about using low lighting in the studios, and so that they refused or would never countenance doing proper mood lighting with the studio rigs? Because they managed it for Genesis, they managed it with Star Cops, and I know Warriors of the Deep was rushed. Wasn't it to do with strikes from technicians or an election? I can't remember.
It could well be, because
because the paint was still wet on the Myrka, wasn't it?
It's just out of the water.
If you look at Enlightenment, the lighting, that is fantastic. And Vengeance on Barrows, we just watched, you know, there was the lighting was quite good.
It's whenever they do white walled sets, white corridors.
Yeah, I think that's that whole futuristic thing of if it's white, it's always sort of, you know, brightly lit and whatever.
So, John and I think we have successfully now launched a plan to make a Myrka great again. That would be a good Doctor Who baseball cap.
Make a Myrka great again. I love it.
That was running through corridors.
Make a Myrka great again.
Roll up and see the monster show. Roll up and see the monster show, a carnival of monsters, all living in their natural habitat, wild in this little box of mine.
We're going to do a new feature now that we've done all of the Doctor by Doctors and gone through each Doctor and some alternatives. We are going to look at monster by monster. Now, obviously, with quite a lot of monsters and aliens in Doctor Who, we could hope for that many podcast episodes. Well, we could. Don't know if any of you could. But what we're going to do is maybe do a few if we get a sort of a minor monster. If we get one that we've got lots to say about, then great, we'll just talk about that. So I have put into a random number generator numbers 1 to 251. I've drawn a list from the BBC website, which has some omissions. I don't think it does like single named characters like Fenrick's not on there and so on. But this will give us some monsters, and the first battle will be to see if I can even remember which episode they're from. So here I go, generating the random number. The random number was 199. I'll just find out what that is on the list. Okay, it's the Skovox Blitzer.
Brilliant.
So from The Caretaker. I only remember that because we randomizered it recently.
Yeah, we did, actually. Yeah, Skovox Blitzer. It's so much a Sarah Jane Adventures monster.
And I think it's 3 parts rum and a bit of vodka and then some pineapple juice. That's how you make a Skovox Blitzer, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a Sarah Jane monster, but it also has it also reminds me a little bit of a Judge Dredd type thing as well.
What do you think, John? Would you spend Christmas with a Skovox Blitzer?
I don't think I would. Well, I suppose it'd be good as an ornament.
You need a big shelf. Okay, let's see what we get now. 133, okay, back in time. These are in chronological order as well, which slightly de-randomised into Hemivores. There's some
Hemivores, close to Fenrick.
They were great.
Yeah,
Hemivores, or the Dregs as they get called later in the series.
So the vampiric remnants of humanity in the Curse of Fenrick.
The 2 girls looking vampiric work very well. The Great Hemivore works very well. The extras that come out of the water and behind the grates slightly suffer because there's so many of them and they've all got so much money for rubber masks. But great idea.
Yeah. It's clever that they had them in, like the costumes as well. You know, some in sort of period and then World War One and all that. They are very memorable. Even as a one-off, these made an impact.
Let's do another monster. 74, so we're going to be definitely old series. Rebosian. Well, it's an alien rather than a monster. Basically, Planet Rebos. Well, I mean, Ali's great mate, Prentice Hancock, of course. Is a Rebosian, is he not? Leader of the Guard.
Mm-hmm. And so was Binro.
Yeah.
Binro was a Rebosian.
Yeah,
but his friend Byro wasn't a Rebosian. I think we should just move on from Rebosians because there's not much to say about them. 142. It is Sycorax.
Oh,
Sycorax Rock. I was really impressed that they managed to get Queen in to play the Sycorax.
It was very Bohemian Rhapsody, wasn't it?
I think that was a deliberate homage, wasn't it?
They were really good. Nice design, costume.
John, Sycorax memories. This is one you've watched with Amber, right?
Yes, watched it recently. I liked the way that they had a human blood type for that Mars probe they sent out, so they used that to control a third of the population or whatever it was, wasn't it? I thought that was clever. And when got no name, what's the Prime Minister's name?
We don't know who she is. You're just doing karmic balance for that now, John, by forgetting.
I can't believe I forgot that. No, the Sycorax were good. Like Chaz says, the makeup was very good, and just making a sort of brutal alien. Yeah. It worked.
They're very Buffy. I mean, it's fresh in my mind. I just watched it. But in terms of, it's the big dividing line, obviously generational, between new series and old, of that kind of villain that's kind of got a bit of wit and panache as well as just being a villain. And I think it's nowhere more exemplified in terms of tone of drama than in Force Awakens when they Poe Dameron down in front of Kylo Ren, and he just goes, "So, do you talk first?" That's the moment where you know the tone of the whole thing now has shifted irrevocably. And a new series Who has that in spades, I think. And when they have Sycorax rock, you're just like, okay.
That was what Russell T Davis said at the very first tone meeting of the show. He said, "Think Buffy."
Yeah.
Could
the Sycorax come back?
Doctor Who magazine did a sequel comic strip where the widows of the Sycorax on that ship were after revenge. It was that kind of Malcolm Holt thing of the widows were like misguided villains rather than being actual evil.
Yeah, there's a similar story in one of the Orville episodes.
Now, we're not talking Keith Harris here, are we?
It's the big villains of the show. They sneak aboard and try to kill.
I've seen that one.
And with the children and all that, and they're trying to...
They're going to blow the ship up until they see the school kids.
Yeah, they're sort of trying to say, we're not bad guys, but then they aren't, because, it's in the memories of the children and stuff.
So I think we'll do one last monster, and then move on. It is 105. Trions, so an alien race, rather than...
that's Turlough's people.
It is.
Yeah.
Planet of Fire.
Yeah, it is,
They've got weird brands on their arm. I think that's the only
that's basically it.
I think, given that they've got Tri in their name, is there much about three? Is it kind of three symbols on Turlough's arm?
It's a sort of triangle with a rectangle crossing through it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that was a brand for political prisoners.
Yeah, that's right.
So there was a book called Turlough and the Earthlink Dilemma, which I never read because it just looked dull as shit.
I did read it. I had it. I don't know who wrote it. I don't remember.
It was Tony Atwood who did Blake's 7 Program Guide and did the Afterlife novel. Which is dreadful if you've ever read that.
His pedigree in fiction was the Blake 7 Program Guide.
Yeah.
I think they could have definitely got a better author in. For example, I mean, there was a really good book written years ago.
Short Trips.
Sort of Short Trips. Yeah.
I knew you were going there.
And. And of course there was a wonderful story in it called Set in Stone, which happened to be written by Mr. John Isles and myself.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I had to get an unsolicited plug in.
Another thing to celebrate about your connection with John.
Of course. John and I are published authors. John admittedly got at least 2 or 3.
2. So I had a short story in Beneath Summerfield, Something Changed.
Oh, yeah,
and the same editor was looking for pictures for the next Short Trips History of Christmas. Mm-hmm. So Chaz helped me out by suggesting a story, and then we wrote it together, and it got accepted, got vetted by VC, and it was in there. That was 2005.
We went to that sort of soiree, the Big Finish soiree.
We did, organised by
London.
By the editor Simon Gurrier, who was a very nice guy. Still is, if you're listening, Simon.
Of course he is.
And did you write all the long words in the story, John?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, he wrote the long words, and
some of the ands and the these.
And
the ellipses,
things like that. And, yeah.
Well, you let him do the punctuation. Brave.
Yes.
Bloody hell. That is brave. If you've ever seen my punctuation, it's a late friend Kenny. Whenever I wrote a short fiction or a random fiction, he spent more time editing mine than anybody else's, and that was basically to put punctuation in. My sort of 3-page story was 1 sentence.
Editing you is a labour of love, my friend. I
am. I'm an acquired taste.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Could it have been affected by tangential deviation coming out of the warp ellipse?
What are you talking about, grease stain?
Let's wrap up the podcast with a tangent. Not that we haven't had enough anyway, but our official tangent is Red Dwarf. We have been rewatching the glorious sitcom Red Dwarf, and we are up to season 8, which is sort of loosely titled as a season back in the red, because we are back in Red Dwarf. It's been brought back by nanites, along with the original crew. And we have a much bigger scope, a bigger cast, and also cleverly a return to some of the kind of containment and claustrophobia of the very original series by putting them in prison.
Yes.
Yeah, which to me is sort of my favourite sort of style of Red Dwarf. That sort of closed in.
The pitch that sold it eventually was steptone's son in space.
Yes.
The two characters that hate each other.
Yeah. Or Porridge.
Conflicted, stuck together.
Yeah, very much.
And the next time after that we saw Porridge in space was in Nightmare in Silver.
Very funny.
I peaked too soon with Make a Myrka crate. So I've got the episode guide up here. We'll just rattle through and just quick thoughts.
Notes.
Oh, John's got notes. Back in the Red is a 3-part sort of linked storyline. We'll kind of talk about that as one thing, really, but it sets out the store for the season. They've been put in prison because of the crash that Starbug causes when they re-arrive in Red Dwarf. But it drops us in cold, not knowing what's happened in between, with a prison scene with Lister hilariously just trying to get Rimmer to talk to him again.
Yeah. I can't believe it, etc.
It's just great stuff. Straight away, the writing feels really sharp and fresh again.
Isn't it amazing how far they've come as actors? I mean, okay, Chris Barry was always good, but Craig Charles has just got so good, you know, especially playing Lister, you know, over the years. It's wonderful to see them together, you know, because they just are so perfect, you know, perfect opposites.
Is this the season when they started using CGI? Because I remember reading stuff with Doug Naylor at a time where someone came to him and said, look, we can do CGI spaceships, we can do dinosaurs and whatever, what do you think? And he saw the potential in it and then wasted 2 episodes on Pete with a dinosaur. But they just about go over it for the models, I think. The rat-arse gag kind of worked.
Yes.
But I just think it became too enamoured with CGI this season.
It's that kind of transitionary CGI that really doesn't age well. I think they had CGI Starbug last season, actually, as well. It's all got to be storytelling tools. And, of course, we did see and have never gone back to the heady heights of claymation at one point in this episode.
Oh, yeah. God.
When they end up in the screensaver on the way out of the hallucination. I think it's probably the most coherent and strong, the 3-parter Back in the Red. And the sort of side plot with them all hallucinating is very clever.
Oh, and seeing Holly back. And one of my favourite bits is when Rimmer goes to the toilet in the prison cell and it's the sleep blind that just says
engaged.
Engaged. I just love that. And also, well, they tried other writers for season 7 which didn't work. So this is all Doug Naylor again.
There's a couple that are co-written with Paul Alexander.
I do like Red Dwarf 8.
Yeah.
But it just slightly suffers. I think Doug Naylor's overcompensating for not having Rob Grant. And I think that's what lets down the rest of them until maybe he settles around Red Dwarf 10, I think.
Don't know. Yeah, I mean, I must admit, since we've been doing this, because I hadn't watched Red Dwarf in years, and I've actually, I think at least 2 series I haven't watched of the Dave stuff.
At all.
So I'm not watching them, and I'm not going to because I want to sort of, you know, come with them.
It'll be my Tomorrow People moment.
Yeah. Well, not quite because it's good. But you know, it's I'm really looking forward to watching them. But I've really enjoyed watching these again because, you know, it's funny, you think you're not going to remember it, but I find myself quoting reams of dialogue because it just all comes flooding back.
If we ever lose internet, we can probably just shout the scripts at each other down the phone.
Yeah, pretty much. And I have to admit, there's not been a series that I've disliked, really. I mean, there's been some stories that are better than others, obviously, but I've not disliked anything at all.
We'll hold that thought for back on Earth.
Well, that's the only one I am not looking for.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's finish season 8 and then we'll come back to it for next episode. But so Back in the Red's the 3-parter. Cassandra, and then it's all sort of broken up apart from Pete. So Cassandra is next, which is a really clever plot.
It is very clever. Again, it's a good use of science fiction because everything Cassandra predicts happens, you know, and those scenes with Kachansky and Rimmer trapped together.
Her face.
That is.
And just like the other Canaries, the idea that these prisoners go on dangerous missions.
Yeah, kill crazy. It's just such good value.
You know,
who is now a regular in EastEnders.
Yeah. But I love it when he Kill Crazy knocks himself out.
There's all that build up and he goes bang, crash. Great.
But can I just mention how bad Chloe Annette is? Chloe Annette's terrible in Red Dwarf.
Really?
I think at best she's watchable, But I don't think she's even getting poor direction. She was dreadful in Crime Traveller. I just think she's getting bad direction, but she just doesn't quite feel right.
Leave this podcast now.
No, we wanted someone to disagree
have a
with
bad word said about Chloe Annette.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I remember Crime Traveller, but no specifics.
That's for the
Crime
best,
Traveller
probably.
was fucking terrible. I really like Chloe Annette. I actually think she's very good. I'm
speechless.
I'm literally speechless.
John, that's like a badge of honour.
John, I'll arrange your fight. You know.
Okay.
I'm utterly speechless, John. You have shocked me to my very core.
And yet you're still speaking. Tell us more. Justify your foul heretical beliefs.
Yes.
I just think she's slightly underwhelming as Kachansky, even from her first episode. And I'm not trying to say sexist or anything because the men are better, but she just doesn't quite feel right.
It's hard to put a female character into that series.
Maybe she hasn't got the same energy as the male characters. I don't know.
Well, maybe, but isn't that the point? She's not supposed to fit in.
I just find her slightly underwhelming and spoiling the series. And when Crichton has that rivalry against her, that's me.
No, I mean, genuinely, you made some really good points there, but what I would say is you're completely fucking wrong.
Oh, I love it. I'm on Chaz's side with maybe less of his abject shock and denialism, I would hope. For me, it definitely gave the series a shot in the arm, but it was only in this kind of series I think that it bedded in properly, because they kind of have to deal with the elephant in the room of like Lister fancying her all the time, every episode continually, and there's some really good moments with that, like Crichton as a kind of foil for that is clever writing in the sense that
I so love those bits with Crichton.
Yeah, it keeps
really
it funny, but it does completely change Crichton's character in Reaction, if you like, as well. But I think in this one, she's kind of just one of the gang, and obviously still the object of desire and affection. As in the next episode, Crichton TV, it's all about the kind of Crichton spying on the women in the showers, and then
because he gets classified as a woman, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know if that one's aged as well.
No, I was going to say that's
but,
probably the weakest episode.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's some good. I think I said this to Jazz as we watched through that all the episodes have some good, sometimes brilliant set pieces.
They do.
Like the messing up the apartment and then having to tidy it up again, and there's every episode's got something, but no single episode necessarily is entirely great.
I suppose technically this is a season that is less than the sum of its parts.
Oh, I was going to say it's great seeing Matt McDonald back.
I love Matt McDonald
as Captain.
Yeah, he's great.
I love spotting him in. I love spotting him in British films. As a token American. He plays one of the cops in The Fifth Element. Small part, but he's there. And seeing him in just other things. But yeah, I thought he was really good in season 1 of Red Dwarf, so it's good having him back.
He's cut out of the Aliens special edition. He's the leader of the base that gets destroyed. And in my head canon, that's Hollister.
Brilliant.
Of all of the episodes, the two-parter Pete is the most like a series of sketches strung together. And some of them are brilliant, the potato spuds and coming back to the captain each time.
Yes.
Hollister's progressing kind of trauma at all that's happening is very beautifully written.
That is a very good sequence.
Yeah.
I think out of all the episodes, I mean, I like Cassandra a lot, but I think Only the Good is probably my favourite.
That's my least favourite.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
No, I really like it. I love again, it's more like a series of moments, but the big argument with the vending machine, you are my nemesis, and stuff like that. It sort of reminds me of the old Red Dwarf, when the vending machine had a lisp.
Tony Hawk's that one.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
I was going to say one of my favourite moments, like you're saying, it's more a series of great moments rather than great episodes. Is when Lister talks to Crichton about the time of the month when he's got that banner saying have a great period, and
it's like at the moment Crichton realises this isn't it, is it? He set me up. That
is brilliant. I mean, that creased my life up when we watched it.
It's a series of fun moments, but overall not necessarily the best episodes, but
No.
I still enjoyed them all very much. I remember having a discussion with David Legg, when we were talking about Doctor Who. He said even when Doctor Who isn't great, it should always be the best thing on television that week. And I always think that about Red Dwarf as well.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. The Rimmer in Series 8, he is flesh and blood, the one who hasn't been through all the adventures with them. And yet he's only in this series because he's back as a hologram for some reason in Back to Earth. Yeah. But he still falls in with them as if he is the original Rimmer.
It's interesting though, because I don't know, I get the feeling that he is playing it slightly differently.
Oh, he is, definitely, but he still falls in for storytelling, I suppose.
Of course.
But you're right, he's flesh and blood for one series.
In the episode where he's had the sexual magnetism virus.
That's hilarious.
Use of. I think it's overall, I prefer it to season 7.
It is better, definitely, than 7.
I mean, the laugh track thing is hard to sort of underestimate the importance of, or overestimate the importance of, because it really did damage those episodes that were missing the laughs in season 7, I think. But
it was that thing of Doug Naylor not really having the confidence without Rob Grant.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think probably Ed Bye directed 7 and thought, let's try doing it with single camera.
Yeah.
Which then meant they couldn't film with an audience. But then they went back to 8. So it's kind of just messing around trying to get the formula. But then wasn't it like 10 years between 8 and Back to Earth?
I know. It's back to Red Dwarf and back to the kind of a lot of the core of what made the show really strong and powerful. So big win overall, I think.
Exactly.
And then no more of it for 10 years. So... I mean, given our release schedule, it might be that amount of time before we get to Back to Earth. So we will come back to watch Back to Earth and report back. Thank you very much.
It's the end. But the moment has been prepared for.
9 times out of 10.
John, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, mate, it's been wonderful. It really has.
It's been a pleasure catching up and talking about something I'm passionate about that I kind of neglect sometimes.
I know you're passionate about me, John. I've always known that.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to contact us, and especially if you have a propensity for vulgar facetiousness, you can contact us at randomiserpodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at
randomiserpod. And in both cases, that's randomiser with an S, not a Z.
But his friend Byro wasn't a Robozo.
No. And his other pal Papermate.
We're Bic the Tharo. That's good. That's quality.
Yeah, and Apple Pencil.
Oh, I am going to have so much material for after the credits this time.
It was a monster man.
All right.
You can use that sound clip.
Thanks, Jess. We are going to go... Not to go back, but where was the vengeance on Varos? Who was exactly venging on what for what? I think there's just a bit of an overuse of alliteration going on here.
I think we like the alliteration.
I think authors should have a kind of career-defined, allotted quota of alliteration, and once they've used it up, that's it.
I think it's Dominion of Fear.
Dominion of Fear is good.
Dominion of Fear. Sorry, mate. Can I just pause for a second?
Yep.
Somebody's at the door.
Go for it, man.
Oh, is it 2 men in black suits? Was it 2 men in black suits, Chaz?
You can't remember. Much like Big Finish. Let's get it in the can before we all die.